God's book that he gave us, the Bible, we call it the Bible, it's designed to help us never make a mistake.
This is the Unscripted Podcast.
What's up, guys? Glad y'all joined us again today. We haven't scared them off yet, Bob.
What, the three?
Yep, all three of them.
Yeah.
Hey, we actually got 4.
Yeah, that's right.
We got 4 now. You know how I know?
How?
We got a video.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we asked for your videos and we asked for your questions, and then we actually had somebody send us one in. So that was really good. Sorry, that was my newer box that I dropped for 2 episodes in a row. We hopefully Ben can edit that out.
I can't edit. I can't do that.
Ben can't edit. So I'm just really thankful because Ben makes everything on our podcast so much better, and so I wanted to show that.
You're making it worse, kicking it around.
Well, instead of kicking the box down the road, we just want to thank Ben because Ben makes everything newer. So give Ben if y'all can give him a round of applause. What you can't hear is that Chris just put like clapping all up in my ears and applause from
they can hear it on the
Can
podcast.
they hear it? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyways, Ben makes things newer, and so we just want to thank you, Ben. So give Ben, if you've noticed our podcast has been better recently with
Quality of
video and lighting, then we just want to say thanks to Ben. So there's Ben. Everybody say hi to Ben.
Appreciate it.
And he's single, ladies. No gentlemen, but ladies. He's single. No, hey, we're glad that you guys are with us today, and we're glad that, we have this opportunity. I really love doing our podcast together. And, I enjoyed our topic that we had last week, and what does an unscripted life look like? Mm-hmm. And, we solicited some of our viewers to hey, we'd love for you guys to send in some questions and or comment or video them in, or you can submit them on Messenger, email, or whatever you want to do, and we love to answer those questions for you, or at least try to. And so if you have ever sent somebody, the wrong person, a message, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for us today.
Oh man, I've done that. I'll tell a bad story about me one time. So we had a district attorney. She's actually a member of the church, and but she's the DA for our hometown area. Her name was the same name as my wife, and whenever
Courtney Tips.
No, her just name was Courtney, and so I just put it in the phone as Courtney. Like when I was putting her number in my phone, I just put it in there right quick. And so yeah, I'd sent her a text one day that meant to go to my wife, and but it fortunately, we just had a joke about it. It was just like, hey, can you pick up whatever for t-ball practice? And she's like, hey, wrong Courtney, and so it was funny, but pretty cool. Her husband's the elder of the church, and but she's like, hey, could have been much worse, So yeah. I learned right then, like, I better put the last names on there. So yeah, I've sent the wrong question to the wrong woman before. If you ever sent the wrong question to the wrong woman, go on and hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for joining us today. You can hit us up on all the places where you listen to podcasts, and so we had someone submitted a video question, and we asked that you do the same, and so Ben's gonna play the video for us on the podcast,
and we appreciate that, and we just want to know that it's open to whatever questions you have. I actually got a question myself submitted to me. Somebody said, hey, I'd like for you guys to talk about this on the Unscripted Podcast. Somebody from the congregation,
okay, cool,
hit me up with a question, but it's not. It's one that'll take us a little bit of time. So maybe, next time we can talk about that one, or we could pull it. We could pull one of the questions that we had submitted to us out of the box.
Yeah, and before we play the video too, I just want to say this, and I think this is really cool because I think sometimes we have some leaders in the church that listen to us, but one thing that we did this past Sunday night I guess a couple Sunday nights before, we had asked our congregation to submit those questions. We talked about that on the podcast, and then we ended up last week. Chris and I narrowed those down because some of them were kind of the same question, like, and so we ended up, we had 55 questions.
No, we narrowed down.
We narrowed it down to 55 questions. Well, we took 23 of those this past Sunday night and passed them out to our congregation in the fellowship hall. We met in the fellowship hall as our Sunday evening assembly. And then we paired up all those. We just handed out numbers and handed out envelopes with a question, and then paired those people up, and to answer questions. And it was really neat. What did you think about it, Chris?
Well, what was really interesting was the way that we paired everybody up, in the sense that in life, as an unscripted life, as it were.
Ben, I want your take on this too, because you participated.
Yeah, in an unscripted life, as it were, you got to think that ultimately you don't know who you're going to run across. We like to. What happens is we kind of stitch these scenarios up in our mind. If this happens, I'll do this. If this happens, I'll do that. Yeah, and I think those are good to play through.
Yeah, right.
Kind of.
I play scenarios over in my mind all the time.
Yeah, role play.
Yeah,
and I think we do it in a lot of things. Like, what if somebody breaks in the middle of the night?
Right, what happens if I encounter a shooter right now in the middle of Walmart? Blah, blah, blah.
All those things. Well, I think we do that as Christians too. Like, if somebody asks me this question, how am I going to do that?
Right.
But what happens is I think we picture demographically the people that look and are like us. Somebody that we would think that would be in our social circle. Well, we've got a broad demographic of people here at KW, rich to poor, black and white, and all those kind of, if you charted out a spectrum in the middle. And
what a blessing.
Yeah, amen. And what was kind of neat was to see the way that people were kind of paired up. Mm-hmm. You had older ladies with college men, you had, older ladies with college girls. You had
middle-aged ladies with college girls. You had a 50-year-old man with how old was, with a brand new Christian, 8 and he's 13,
Yeah. Or you take.
Or 12.
Yeah. I think he's 12.
Stafford. Yeah.
Yeah. So you take, and Walker, who's 30, was with Miss Dorothy, who's 85 or something like that. And so it was just really neat to watch them kind of work through those things, because if you'd have said pick somebody, they'd pick their hunting buddy, their fishing buddy, or somebody that they
and that was the thing, is so I had the first table of 3. There was 2 older gentlemen, one 50 in his 50s, one in his 80s, and then a slew of college and grad students. And so I just went through, handed those out. Well, then the next kind of group of people were kind of that middle-aged and kind of broken up. And so then it's just like, okay, so the first group got first table's got envelopes, the next table got, those. And then the cards just kind of fell how they fell.
Yeah, you didn't know what was, because you handed out envelopes, so you didn't really necessarily know what was, question number 13.
Right.
When we made the questions, we didn't prioritize them. We just made a list.
Yeah.
These questions were asked by the church, and then the church was able to pair up and just look at God's word, of what the answer is. And it was just so awesome to see everybody engaged with one another.
Yeah. So who did you get partnered with?
I was with Ricky Moore.
Yeah. So Ricky's what, mid 50s?
Yeah. Mid 50s. Great servant,
right.
Humble heart.
So there's roughly 25 years difference between Ben and Ricky. And so Ben, honest answer here. Now I know you love Mr. Ricky, but like, if you would have said, "Hey, Ben, I'm gonna let you pair up with somebody," would you have gone, "Oh, let me pick Mr. Ricky to help answer this question"?
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
That's why you had to give out. There was a table with 20 college kids or whatever it was on it up there, and you had to bust that up.
It's pretty neat too. I know of at least 2 people that got paired up with somebody who had never talked to those people or never really got into a deep conversation with them before.
Yeah, and that's the blessing of it. And so, we're just trying to, like we say, move from academia to application on Sunday night, because the application is where the rubber meets the road. It's like yesterday, we were working on our project for this coming Sunday, and
you almost said it.
Well, by the time this airs, it'll be already
That's
out, right?
That's right.
But we made our stand for the yoke, and it's we're teaching Carson and Aiden's been around this a long time, but you're teaching Carson how to weld now, and so you think about this, you can spend a lot of time, and I've got posters everywhere in the shop, right? That's got all these welding, schematics and techniques and everything like that, but all that is just academia.
Yeah.
And so, you can tell Carson all these things, and then you watch him try to weld, and he's up here doing this thing right here, and you're like, Carson, you need to understand how to do this and be successful at it. And because when he gets done, it's all it looks like a blob, and it's just his first time.
Right.
It's just rookie mistakes, and so that's where you come in and you help him with application, because you can give him all the knowledge, tell them all these things, but then it eventually just takes somebody holding your hand and helping you doing it.
And that's what's really cool. I hope, Ben, I'm going to send you that video, but I was showing Ben videos of yesterday of us working on that, and I was showing him them today. And Ben made the comment, he said Carson was what with Chris?
Yoked.
Carson was yoked with Chris. And that was amazing. Of course, I'm learning too, the first time I ever welded something was at your house, and that was on your gate for your barn. But then, or your ramp for your barn. But then, so yesterday I'm welding too. So yeah, you can theoretically tell somebody, okay, so to make a weld, you're fusing these two pieces of metal together. So you're going back and forth, and whatever motions that you are between these two pieces of metal, and you're going back and forth. But for him to actually see that, and of course he understands these principles. So the whole principle that you did with me on my feet, he thought that it was his feet placement was wrong when he was welding. That's what he told me later. I was like, no, son, he was trying to tell you need balance and with your arms. And so even you trying to tell him, and you gave a perfect example of that, of balance. You were trying to tell him how he needed to place his hands and arms on the table, to make this weld steady. But that's the same way he understood it in his mind, but he wasn't putting it to use, and that's why the yoke is so amazing. And this is why I want to bring up this verse with answering these questions from Hebrews 5. The problems with the early church was, the Hebrew writers telling them, by this time, this is Hebrews 5:12, for though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the first principles of the oracles of God, and you come to need milk and not solid food. Well, if you've been in machining for 20 years and somebody's having to go back and teach you how to weld, well, something's wrong.
Right.
And so we in leadership,
and those things are, what happens is there's a lot of things that I do. So I'll give you an example. I wrote coding for a long time or I used a lot of G&M coding, which is, GO1 is a it's looking for a feed rate move. MO3
I don't know what
well, I'm just telling you, like all these are code commands, right? But if you don't use those things, because MO3, which means spindle forward, and then you have to give it an S value, which means the how many RPMs it's going to be.
Spin.
Yeah, if you don't use that in your mind, MO3 is detached, right? It's just a sequence of letters and numbers, and so there's nothing tangible to it that I can hold on to. So there's nothing that it represents in space, in my mind. And so when we do these things, we can say, like we can hand out our cards, right? Here's your card. You can tell somebody these things, or like we can give, like I used OBS. I can give somebody the OBS and say, hey, go teach this to somebody. But all that, there's no attachment to it because they haven't been taught how these things function. So when you start putting people in these positions to where you're giving them something and now they're putting it in practice, and now they've got something they can attach it to, right? It's not digital. It's not binary. It's not just ones and zeros. It's not on and off. You're giving them something that they can use, and what you're doing is you're sharpening their sword. You develop, the more that you know, that the more wrinkles you get in your brain is what happens. And so what you're doing is you're helping that person to form and mold their brain into where they're starting to see the world in a different way now, to where it becomes a tangible thing that when I meet somebody, I have a responsibility to start bringing them around to what the Lord wants them to do. And if we don't use those things, you'll lose them.
That's right. That's what this is saying. You know, you have need of milk. Verse 13, for everyone who partakes only of milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe, but solid food belongs to those who are full age. That is, those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. So I've by reason of use, you know, so I've got
reason. That means like we've thought through this thing.
Exactly.
You know, how do I use something? Like I can hand you, I got a million tools in my shop. I can hand you some of them, and you're going to know immediately that's a wrench or a hammer. And there's some of them I'm going to hand you. You ain't going to have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
And so you need to learn how to reason out these tools.
That's right.
And so that's that reason of use then.
That's right. And they've had their senses exercised. They've used this, and so that's the whole thing. Is Carson he's trying to weld with both his arms up off the table like this.
And probably part of it was scared he was going to get burned.
That's right.
And stuff like that.
Then, he's putting his arm down and he's actually,
he's doing a good job.
He's doing a good job.
And what had to happen is he had to learn that yes, it's 20,000 degrees there. But at the end of the day, if you do it controlled, it's not going to hurt you at all, just like anything.
That's right.
And so that's what once he learned that lesson, then he was fine with.
Yeah, and that controlled environment too is that's one thing that we brought up to the church this past Sunday night was you are in what's one reason why we don't want to study the Bible with people is because we're afraid of a question they're going to answer. They're going to ask us, and so whenever I'm asked this question in a controlled environment now, you're around someone who loves you and someone else who wants to grow. And there's somebody else in the room who doesn't know the answer to this question, or they think that it was reasonable for our church to know this answer. So therefore, swallow your pride and let's look at these things together. Mm-hmm. And I was very thankful for the participation of the church.
And man, dude, people were hanging around a half hour afterwards.
Yeah.
You said at 10 minutes till 6 or whatever time, I don't remember what time we get out, whatever, 10 minutes till 6 or 6 o'clock, whatever it was, like, hey, you consider yourself dismissed. Nobody left.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody slid in a chair and bounced. Everybody was still there. I mean, I think I looked down at 6:23, which is almost a half hour afterwards. There's people still over there writing and taking notes and everything. And what was really cool for me the next day was to look at my email list. I haven't even looked at the responses yet because, we worked on the yoke thing yesterday, right. And then the ball game come on last night, and so we worked on and I didn't look at all of them. I just counted them, see how many it was, and I was just like, this is a really neat thing. And I've thought about churches doing Q&A so many times. They'll pick a Sunday night and they'll have the preacher or the elders or something like that.
Yeah, we'll do that too.
Yeah, and that's fine, right? There's a real.
But that's
blessing.
where our senses are getting exercised,
exactly,
and not theirs.
Exactly, and so that's what the real blessing of this is. And so, we just want to encourage everybody to know that. Listen, there is absolutely a growth process to Christianity, and everybody that's done it has done it, and there's no way to short circuit it.
My son got to have a one-on-one Bible study with an elder's wife Sunday night.
Exactly.
How awesome is that? And yep. So they're working as a team on a question,
right? And
I mean, and their question wasn't real easy,
Yeah, there were some tough questions asked, and that's okay. We can handle. We need to talk about the things we need to talk about, and not the things that are easy.
Yeah,
because that's how we grow, and that's how we get stronger. And so that's why it's a real blessing for us as a church family to be able to do these things. And listen, we just want to really encourage you guys that are out there listening today to really. We want you to grow, and we hope that you can see our podcast as a way that you can do that, and really just as an encouragement. You see Bob and I kind of fumble through this stuff sometimes, and we're aware that we make mistakes and all these things, but we just want that to be an encouragement to you. That's why we said that we only do this in one take. There is we don't do 50 takes of this, one shot and we're done, because we just want you to see that we're just normal people, and we want to encourage you to just be a normal Christian. I say it over and over again. I don't know what preachers are supposed to do, but I know what Christians are supposed to do. And so just live that life that the Lord wants you to live.
You know what we've done? We did a really good job of sidestepping the question to start with. So we
So to
talked
lead
about
into all that, say all that, say this.
Yeah. So
welcome to the Unscripted Podcast.
Yeah, we're gonna take a little break, and then when we come back, we're gonna take on a video question, and then we'll answer it on our set.
The last couple of years feels like we're cast in a movie, but we don't understand which part we play in it. It seems like the line between who's the hero and the villain have been blurred. We thought by now it would come to its happy ending. I suppose that's because we're looking at life like it's a short sitcom, when really, it's an epic tale. We really just needed to look down the road farther, and who we are right now doesn't define us. Who's really been directing our path then? It's time we consider the source. Living in the right now, I'll never see what I can become. We see the Lord as our director, and He's weaving an epic tale where we all play an important part. My short-term losses, He turns into long-term gains. You've listened to all the rhetoric, and you've tried all the fads, and nothing worked. Because all those things were focused on the momentary. It's time to have an eternal vision, and your story can start with us today and finally become the new you in 22.
All right, so now we're going to take this our question.
And this is from Lauren Williams. She lives in Olive Branch, Mississippi.
Lauren Williams.
A great Christian.
Oh yeah, Lauren. Yeah.
Yeah, so
She went to camp with us 1 year.
Yep. And
Great girl.
she stayed in our guest house one night, I believe, didn't she, Ben? Yeah. Yeah, so here's her question. We're going to go ahead and listen to this. We're going to hope we can answer it with some sense.
I can't hear it.
The more I learn,
Okay.
that it can be. Hey, Chris and Bob. So my question is about how we tend to view fear as a bad thing. But the older I get, the more I learn that it can be actually good and healthy for us. So my question is, how does God want us to view fear, and how do we better serve Him through that fear?
Okay.
That's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks for the question. You want me to go first?
Go ahead.
I guess when I think about fear, the first thing that comes to my mind would be Proverbs. I believe Proverbs 1, it talks about how that fear, fearing the Lord is the beginning of knowledge.
Wisdom.
Well, the one verse says
Proverbs
wisdom.
9 says wisdom.
Proverbs 9 says wisdom. Proverbs 1 says knowledge. And so there's so you have these two things. So fear, yeah, she nailed it in that there's healthy fear. Fear as a SWAT officer will keep you alive because it'll make you train more. It's not that fear is going to make me not go through that door, but fear is going to make me have my senses and going to make me have my craft on point. And so I know that what's on the other side of that door, I have intel that this person, is known to carry a gun and has made statements that they're not afraid to use it and they're not going to go back to jail, blah, blah, blah. So that puts me in a mindset that goes, you better be on your A game. And I'm just not going to go up and go, hey,
I was wondering if.
I was wondering, sir, if you don't mind,
I wrote 300 tickets 1 month.
No, it's no that we have to. No, I wrote less than 10 tickets in my whole career.
You told us on last week.
I said I pulled over 300 cars, no tickets.
Okay. Well,
no tickets.
Well, all I heard was pulled over 300 cars.
That's right. No speeding tickets.
So
yeah, back to that thing of, kicking doors is, no, we're going to go dynamic on this thing. And we're going to make sure that, I'm going home. I'm going back to my family. And so I have a commitment to provide for my family. I have a commitment to serve the community. But that fear is my fear is that I didn't want my children to grow up without a father. It's not that I'm afraid, I'm going to get shot or whatever.
I mean, that's a real fear too.
Yeah, those things can go in your mind as well. But you train those senses to goes. I want to be on top of it. And so it's not that I'm so afraid, so I'm going to disconnect from that. And that's what you have with fears. You have fight or flight most of the time. Is I'm going to run away from it or I'm going to fight. And you look at that, and most people know that the mannerisms of a dog. Either dog's going to run away or they're going to stand there and they're going to fight. Same way with people. And so
how does that help us serve the Lord?
Well, so I think that there's healthy fear in that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Well, that's not the fear to the point that I'm going to not do anything. He's saying that's the beginning of me doing something, and that's me gaining knowledge.
Proverbs, let's read the verse in Proverbs. It's Proverbs 9 something other. Proverbs 9:10. Proverbs 9:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. And so I think we need to, kind of kick it back to what Solomon said. This is Solomon here in Ecclesiastes, the guy that's lived the life, after he's lived
the life.
The life of every pleasure that you could,
He said there's nothing that I saw that I withheld.
Yeah, I mean, everything that he wanted to do, he just went on and did it.
Yeah. And
so when Solomon is stitching up the book of Ecclesiastes at the end of it,
here's the conclusion of the whole matter.
Let's just hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Like everything that I've talked about, all the, the comings and the goings and all the everything, he said, let's hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all.
That's right. And I wanted to touch up 1:7 as well, Proverbs. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So I'm going to fear God to the point, and that's a healthy fear. It's a respect thing. I'm gonna have enough respect for God that I understand that what he says he's going to do, and at the end of it, I understand that there's consequences to my decisions.
So you think about what we did yesterday. We back to Carson's deal, and he's all, when he, I didn't know why he was doing that weird, right? This deal like this, I didn't understand why he was doing it. In my mind, there was 10 things, but I needed him to tell me, why are you doing this? When he said, is it going to burn me? Then I knew what his concern was. I didn't know if he was thinking it's not going to hold. There's 1,000 things that ran through my mind because I've boogered whales 1,000 different ways, right? And so when Carson said, is it going to burn me? Yes, if you do it wrong. So what you're doing is you're helping Carson to understand how he can achieve success with a healthy respect of what it can do to you.
That's right.
But not that you're worried about that anymore, right? Once you understand what it's going to do, then you don't worry about it anymore. Then you've got to, not that we can contain God. I don't mean to say that, right?
Yeah.
But God has told us, like, I want you to live a certain way knowing that you're free. I want you to live a certain way knowing that I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go to prepare a place for you, then I'm going to come again and receive. If we had more Christians that really believed, that what heaven was real, then that would change the way that they live their lives, because it would not stop them from doing anything. No matter, Jesus said, don't fear what man can do to you. Fear him that can cast both body and soul into hell. That's where the real fear should come from. When God on the other side of the coin is saying, don't be scared. I want you to come home. I've spent all this time so that you can come home and be with me eventually. And so that's what God wants us to, in Exodus 5, do you remember the scenario in Exodus 5 where Moses is going through this the plague scenario, and Moses, before he kind of initiates it, I reckon, but Moses comes back and he's telling Pharaoh, you have got to let the children of Israel go. God tells me that I need to tell you this thing. And they're going to start this whole, the Nile River turn into blood, and all the water turn into blood, and the frogs and the lice and the flies and the all these things are going to kind of start happening. But in Exodus 5, here's why Pharaoh didn't let him go. In Exodus 5, and it'll be, first couple verses. Yeah, Afterward, Moses and Aaron went in and told, verse 1, and told Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." And Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go." You see, what you see there is the opposite.
He doesn't know.
Yeah, the beginning of wisdom. Here's the whole sum of man: fear God and keep his commandments. So the reason why he can't fear God is because he didn't know who he is. Pharaoh makes this claim that I'm the day and the evening star, the morning and the evening star. I'm the coming and the going. I'm the everlasting to the everlasting. So he thinks he's God. And so what he doesn't understand is who God is.
That's right.
And so that's why he can't have this healthy fear that we're talking about. And all this stuff like pain. I mean, like you think about if you live a life without pain in it. Pain, I mean, like we think about...
You learn from it.
Yeah, we think about the bad of it. But when do you need to burn your hand to know that it's bad?
No.
No, but how many people burn their hands?
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you burnt your hand before?
Right.
I watched you yesterday just about make the big mistake. That weld had cooled off from cherry red. It's done
Right.
back to the same color, and you just about got it. You just about left your fingerprints on the piece over there. Well, what happens is that we get comfortable, right? We get comfortable with our surroundings. We get comfortable with our situation. We don't fear it anymore because it's not immediately obvious, this threat to us.
Yeah, I forgot that it was cherry red like
8 seconds ago.
4 minutes ago.
Yeah. And so what happens is that that's how you get the burn, right? You see, God's book that he gave us, the Bible, we call it the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
It's designed to help us never make a mistake. We never have to do anything wrong. Now, will we? Yes. I'm not saying we won't.
Mm-hmm.
But it's by design to help us to understand that we don't ever have to make any mistakes. He's already told us everything that we need to know in order to live a godly life, and we'll never have to make a mistake if we follow it explicitly. Now, we won't, right?
Yeah.
We won't do that. But what pain does, fear, right, these things, is it helps us to understand our limitations, right? So I can reach so far. I can pick up so much weight. I can hold so much. I can do so many things before pain says, no, you can't do that. You can't do that thing. And so what that does then is it helps me to understand that this is my limitations. And so the Lord certainly, that's why he spends time telling us about heaven and telling us about hell so that we can have a healthy fear.
Yeah, and I think part of her question stems off of the statement from last week, and I wanted to clarify something too, and this is part of us cutting straight through the Word of God, rightly dividing the Word of truth, in that this word in Proverbs, it talks about, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, is the beginning of wisdom. Fear God and keep his commandments. That reference there, that Hebrew word and the way it's referenced is talking about respect and piety.
Right.
When you look at 2 Timothy 2, what we were talking about last week of God has not given us a spirit of fear, that is a coward.
That's right.
He's not giving us this idea that this spirit inside of us that we're going to run and hide or that we're going to do nothing. No, that you look at the 1 talent man, what did he do? He went and hid what he had, what God had given to him.
And he was afraid.
He was afraid.
I knew that you were.
I knew. And so that's part of it. He knew what God would do, but he was afraid to act on it.
Right.
And so that was part of his punishment was God says, you knew these things, so guess what? We're going to take this away from you, and we're going to give it to the 5 talent man. So God has not given us this spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. Well, all those things are actions to have me gain more wisdom, to have me gain more knowledge. That okay, I respect God so much that there's going to be things that are going to be done different in my life. So that's the way that God wants us to react to fear. I'm gonna respect Him enough that I'm gonna gain this more knowledge, and that knowledge is going to put more application in my life. Because the fools despise that wisdom and instruction. But no, not someone who has this good mentality about what true fear is. And so I fear God and what He says He's going to do. So I'm gonna respect Him enough that there's going to be big changes done in my life.
Well, what you see is this scenario like John says, perfect love cast out what?
Fear.
Fear. Well, it's not that you still don't have, because then that would be opposite of what Solomon says, right? But you think about what happens in Galatians 5. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, all these things. And then at the end of it, it says, against such there is no law. Does that mean that you're not going to be judged? That's not what that means. No. Hebrews 9:27, it's appointed unto man once to die, after this the judgment. 2 Corinthians 5:10, we'll all receive the deeds. Once we die, we'll all receive the
flesh.
Done in the flesh. So there's going to be a judgment day and a time appointed for all of us. But what it is that then we understand that the fruit of the Spirit, right? That means it's the evidence, these things that have taken root in my heart, they've grown, they've been cultivated, now they're producing love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, good, all these things that are listed there in Galatians 5. Then what it has is this confidence that in my life, that I have this understanding that now I'm living a Spirit-filled life, that now it's producing these kind of fruits in it, that my fear now is that the understanding of who God is, and that helps me to cultivate. When you think about, if you understand and fear that your family will not, it's easy. We fuss about supply chain issues, right? Go to the store. Jessica went to the store to make some soup for somebody that was sick the other day, and she was like, man, it's hardly any noodles in here at all.
Yeah, if the truck shut down, America's going to shut down.
See, the difference in that is like when I was growing up, we had to get things in the ground at a certain time in order for them to grow.
Right.
We had to, like there's just certain things in my mind that are seared in there. Like you got to get your potatoes in the ground for St. Patty's Day. All these things were seared in my mind. Why? It was an understanding that if we didn't get potatoes in the ground, we would not be eating them. It wasn't about being scared of the potatoes not growing. It was about being scared of what would not happen in the end. Because my potatoes needed to produce. My family needed to eat. I can still picture in the cellar at my granny's house the pile of potatoes sitting in the dark over there so they wouldn't sprout eyes so we could eat them. And the reason why is because we had an understanding of the way things worked. And so we needed to get them in the ground before St. Patty's Day so that they could produce the kind of fruit.
Yeah, and that same application to build on that, and I think this is probably where you were going, is that, if I see the outcome, okay, if my family, if I don't spend time with them, if I don't spend family Bible time with them, and if I don't nurturally teach my children the proper things, then I can see the results of what's going to happen. Spending more than a decade, almost a decade and a half in a career where you deal with people in the worst moments of their life and the worst decisions of their life, I guess I should say, then this is some of the worst moments. Your house gets broke into, that's a worst moment for you. That doesn't happen often. And but so you see these decisions that people make, and when you sit there with a father and his son has just hung himself, and you're trying to help him cope with that, and all these things are running through his mind, and he asks you a question, why? That's a tough question,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so it's so you're trying to go through all these things. Well, guess what? God didn't make me to know the answer to that question. That's all right. All he made me to do is the reason with this person with compassion.
Because there's no answer that you're going to give him.
No.
What he's he's thinking out loud is all he's doing.
But at the same time, I see that situation and I don't want to be in his shoes. So therefore that fear in my mind puts me to go, okay, this is the beginning of wisdom. So for me to be wise, he gives me things that he didn't do with his child, and he tells me these things. I want to do that different with my children.
So let's bring this thing full circle then. So now we understand that fear is a healthy thing, just like Lauren said. The older she gets, I think because we think about fear like your kids, they fear the woodshed.
Yeah, reverence to God. Yeah, and that's one reason why God puts discipline in your children's lives.
Yeah, that's right.
It'll deliver their soul from hell.
Yeah, you're shaping them into the person they need to be. But there's a time when the woodshed passes away.
Yeah.
And you and I are getting to that point with our oldest kids.
That's right.
Our youngest kids, the woodshed is always an option.
Yeah.
But we realize that we're transitioning out of that with our older kids, and it's because there's a point to where we hope that we've instilled enough understanding in them to where now they fear what needs to be feared, and they move forward with their lives with the limitations that are in place.
Yeah.
And so then ultimately they can really be successful, because the reason why John writes it is because he just wants you to know that the Lord did everything he could do to save you, because he wants you to understand that there's a place prepared for you.
And with our oldest kids, I don't want him to be like, oh, well, if I don't do this, then I'm going to get a belt through the whole life. No, I understand this principle that if I don't do this, it doesn't get done.
Right.
And therefore there's consequences when something doesn't get done. Mm-hmm. And it's the same way with God, that we should have enough respect for him that if the gospel doesn't get taught, it doesn't get done.
Well, he left it up to us.
Exactly.
And so we can't be scared of what man will do to us, because there's a place prepared for those that are prepared.
Fear God, keep his commandments. This is man's all. This is the Unscripted Podcast.